Just as this sequel upturns the theme and tone of its predecessor, it does the same with the plot structure. In A New Hope, Acts 2 and 3 were a thrilling ride, while Act 1 provided a milder but surprisingly fun staging phase. Empire has a fast-paced first act, a mind-blowing third act, and a slightly troubled second act. Act 1 and Act 3 need no explanation. They put the squeeze on our heroes without mercy. Act 2 is trickier. It's split up into two plot lines, Luke's training on Dagobah and the Falcon's flight from the Empire. The latter is more tense for obvious reasons. The Empire is always on their heels and won't stop at anything. When things quiet down, there's the drama between Leia and Han to hold our attention and keep the tension going. Finally, the goals and stakes are unambiguous. The Falcon crew needs to escape and the Empire is not making it easy for them. Now as for Dagobah, the first issue is that the goals and stakes aren't clear. We know Luke is training to be a Jedi Knight. Great, but what happens if he fails? He's already a great soldier of the Rebellion. Is it so he can defeat Darth Vader and the Emperor? Apparently so. Too bad the story doesn't make that clear until the last scene of the plotline. Before that, the story doesn't specify what stakes are attached to this training. Therefore, this crash course on the Jedi arts feels at times interesting, but mostly it's hard to feel that it's moving anything forward. Another potential problem is of a psychological nature. Luke's time on Dagobah consists of one failure after another, a concerted effort to make him less of a romantic superhero and more of a well-intentioned, unprepared human being. That's why the Falcon subplot is so important, because it provides clear goals, stakes, and the satisfaction of seeing our heroes score a couple of wins. If the second act consisted only of Luke's training, it would sink to depths no man has gone before. So, does the Dagobah sequence constitute a failure? No, it's instrumental to the film. In fact, it's the reason why the plot twist at the end works so well. The reveal itself doesn't cut it. Yes, on the most basic level, it's shocking that the hero's father is the villain of the story, especially for kids. But shock alone is not responsible for the emotional power of this plot twist. As I've made it clear, Empire wants to convince the audience that Luke is not a superhero. He makes mistakes, misjudges situations, can be impatient, etc. Hence, the training sequence. Fast forward to the I am your father moment. The reveal carries a lot more weight because it emphasizes that if Luke's own father became a villain, the same could happen to Luke. This disclosure is not just for shock purposes, it's the climax of all those times Luke slipped up throughout the movie. It's a terrifying reminder that good intentions might not be enough to escape a dark fate. A memorable plot twist doesn't rely only on the short-lived impact of surprising reversals. It taps into the theme of a story in order to achieve resonance. Consider the reveal that Luke and Leia are siblings in Return of the Jedi. It's nowhere near as impactful or memorable because it has neither the shock element nor an emotional thread. I think it's just there to put an end to the Han-Luke-Leia love triangle. That's a mechanical twist/reveal, whereas Empire handles its twist with more emotion and thematic relevance. Having said all that, I am of two minds as to how well or not the story established Luke's fallibility. This is important because the more convincingly flawed he is, the likelier it seems he could be turned to the dark side. Yoda accuses him of being reckless, but how reckless has he really been? Sure, he gets knocked down by a Wampa, but that could have happened to anybody. Besides, one could argue Han is being reckless too by going out to find Luke, but it pays off okay, so being reckless is not such a great sin. There's the matter of Luke's impatience too. Yoda seems disappointed in him for not being cool-headed, and acts as if Luke had always behaved in this fashion, but a perusal of this movie and the previous one demonstrates Luke is by and large a caring, compassionate man. This is really the most impatient he's ever been. And let's be honest, how many people would not have been bothered by Yoda's annoying behavior? There you are, stranded in the swamp, and in comes this pestering little creature to make a mess of your camp. I wonder if in Yoda's books it's better to be deceptive and bothersome than impatient. Also, it always surprised me that Luke gave up so easily on his attempt to pull out the X-Wing. he's been established as a guy who tries his absolute best. Even earlier, he didn't quit trying to force pull the lightsaber. He failed, calmed down, and tried again. That's who Luke is. I guess we could make the argument that the training is sapping some of Luke's confidence. He's had more fail marks than A+ after all. But I can't shake off the feeling the movie is forcing this moment of indecision into the story. It's not implausible, it doesn't break credibility, but it feels weird there's no strong precedent for this character trait. My overall conclusion is that at the same time the movie deconstructs Luke as a romantic hero, it plays it safe in some aspects. Just by looking at what's in the movie, it's fair to say Luke is not a bad person. He's not any more reckless than his position as a resistance fighter calls for. He's a patient person and he's not a quitter. Yet for the duration of the Dagobah scenes, the story wants us to believe he's the opposite of all those things, so that in turn, we can believe Luke could potentially end up like his father. Now, I don't think this is a terrible flaw. Luke's training difficulties are still convincing, just not 100% coherent with all of Luke's previous exploits. I say Empire played it a bit safe because it could have constructed Luke differently. Maybe he got cockier after destroying the Death Star. Maybe his heroic status got to his head, and he became arrogant like Han Solo at his worst. Act 1 could have been devoted to showing Luke in a somewhat negative light. Act 2 would have brought him down to earth again. And Act 3 would have confirmed why Luke was in the wrong to become overconfident, and he could have mended his ways by the end of the movie. This transformation might have worked as well as Han's at the end of A New Hope. His part in the story still works, but sometimes I wonder if that was really the best way to go. Since the movie already has a darker tone than A New Hope, I imagine George Lucas may have objected to transforming Luke Skywalker into some sort of anti-hero. Perhaps that's where he drew the line. I'm not sure if this bolder approach would have worked better in execution, but it's food for thought. I believe that as long as the story retains the near palpable affection between its characters, it could have handled a different type of Luke Skywalker. But I guess we'll never know. What we do know is that Empire remains a brave film, even if it held back on making Luke a more complex character. It's that legacy of courage we should embrace first and foremost. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and follow me on Facebook and Twitter to make extra sure you don't miss any of my videos. If you are able to support the channel on Patreon to help keep the lights on, that would be most welcome. Have a wonderful day and go write a great story.